She stood in the line, quietly. No lawyer, no badge, no rank, just a form in her hand and a scar on her temple. When her case was called, she stepped forward. The judge glanced at her file, then stopped. His eyes widened, and in front of everyone, he removed his robe and walked down from the bench. If you believe real power doesn't need to speak, type. She stood alone. It was a typical Monday morning board docket routine. Small claims, cases, traffic violations, minor civil disputes. The municipal courtroom buzzed with a quiet tension of people waiting for bureaucratic justice. She entered the facility without any fanfare or dramatic presentation. Wearing a simple gray coat, no jewelry, maintaining a completely neutral expression that revealed nothing about her purpose or background. She positioned herself at the back of the waiting line, holding a carefully folded legal document in her steady hands. The other petitioners whispered among themselves, laughed nervously at private jokes, checked their smartphones obsessively. Absolutely no one paid attention to her presence. Her case file was buried somewhere in the middle of the morning's substantial stack, numbered according to arrival sequence, appearing completely unremarkable among dozens of similar folders. The court bailiff mispronounced her surname when calling the docket. She stepped forward without bothering to correct his error. Her voice was perfectly calm when she responded present. She had no attorney accompanying her, no legal representative or advocate. The case was officially listed as petition to review prior government decision section redacted under classification authority. No one in the courtroom understood what that legal designation meant. Not even the experienced court clerk who had processed hundreds of similar petitions. She appeared to be just another citizen seeking administrative relief from government bureaucracy, someone challenging a benefits decision or appealing a regulatory ruling. The kind of routine case that occupied municipal courts every day across the country. Her appearance suggested someone of modest means navigating the legal system without professional assistance. No expensive suit or briefcase that would indicate significant resources. No entourage of supporters or family members for providing moral support. Just a solitary individual pursuing whatever remedy she believed she deserved. Other petitioners in the courtroom appeared more prepared for legal proceedings. Several had attorneys whispering strategy. Others carried thick folders of supporting documentation. She held only the single folded document suggesting either supreme confidence or complete naivety about legal processes. The judge was working through his docket with efficient routine, spending minimal time on each case. Standard administrative review, brief argument, quick decision, next case. The morning was proceeding exactly as expected until her file reached the top of the stack. He opened the folder with the same casual attention he had given every previous case. Standard procedure for reviewing petitions that rarely contain surprising information, but something in the documentation immediately captured his complete attention. His casual glance became focused reading. His routine efficiency transformed into careful examination. The change in his demeanor was subtle, but noticeable to experienced court observers. His body language shifted from mechanical processing to engaged analysis. Whatever he was reading was not routine administrative material. The attached documentation contained information that demanded his full attention. Information that appeared to challenge his understanding of the case before him, and possibly his understanding of the person who had submitted it. The courtroom atmosphere began changing as people noticed the judge's unusual behavior. Conversations quieted as observers sensed something significant was occurring. The routine Monday morning docket was about to become something far more memorable because the woman standing quietly at the petitioner's table was not who anyone had assumed her to be. Her modest appearance and lack of legal representation had created a false impression. She was someone whose presence in a municipal courtroom represented far more than a simple administrative dispute. Someone whose background would soon transform the entire proceeding in ways that no one could have anticipated. The folded document in her hands contained information that would redefine everything about her case and her identity. The judge glanced at her submitted paperwork with routine professional attention, then examined the attached supplementary file with growing focus. Page 1 contains sealed content marked with security classifications he rarely encountered in municipal court proceedings. Page 2 displayed partial declassification approval stamps from federal agencies that operated far above his normal jurisdiction. Page 3 revealed a detailed mission log bearing signature clearance from military command authorities. His hand froze completely as he processed the implications of what he was reading. Then he straightened in his chair with obvious recognition and growing comprehension. He removed his reading glasses deliberately, read the complete document again, much more slowly this time. The courtroom had fallen into expectant silence. The bailiff leaned forward with obvious curiosity. "Your Honor, is there a procedural issue?" The judge stood up from his elevated position with ceremonial gravity, reached behind his neck with both hands, and carefully removed his black judicial robe, then stepped down from the bench and walked directly toward her position at the petitioner's table. "Ma'am," he said softly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear, "I never expected to meet you in person." She didn't speak in response, just maintained direct eye contact with quiet dignity. He turned to address the assembled courtroom with unmistakable authority. "This proceeding is concluded. This woman answers to no court that I have the privilege to preside over." A collective gasp swept across the room as observers tried to understand the unprecedented scene. Court proceedings didn't end with judges removing their robes and abandoning their positions of authority. Petitioners didn't receive recognition that transcended normal legal procedures. But something about her documentation had triggered a response that exceeded standard judicial protocol. The judge's reaction suggested he had encountered someone whose authority superseded his own, someone whose service record commanded respect that transcended normal courtroom hierarchy. "All rise," he said formally, though the command was directed at himself rather than the court observers. He stood at attention while she remained motionless at the petitioner's table. The moment stretched in absolute silence as everyone tried to process what they were witnessing. A complete reversal of normal courtroom power dynamics. The person seeking administrative relief had somehow become the person receiving institutional recognition. Her modest appearance and lack of legal representation had concealed an identity that demanded the highest levels of respect. The scarred temple that might have suggested past trauma was revealed as the evidence of service beyond civilian understanding. Her quiet demeanor wasn't uncertainty. It was the controlled composure of someone accustomed to operating at levels of authority that few people ever experienced. "Your petition is granted," the judge said formally. "No review necessary." She nodded once in acknowledgement. Furthermore, he continued, "This court lacks jurisdiction to question decisions made at your operational level." The legal language was formal, but the meaning was clear. She had operated with authority that exceeded normal judicial oversight. Her petition wasn't a request for administrative relief. It was notification that she was resuming activities that courts couldn't regulate. The municipal courtroom had become the setting for recognition of service that operated outside normal legal frameworks. Her presence had transformed a routine Monday morning into a ceremony honoring contributions that most people would never know about. The judge's removal of his robe symbolized acknowledgement that some authority transcended institutional position. That true power came from service rather than appointment. That recognition was earned through sacrifice rather than granted through political process. The courtroom remained silent as the implications settled over everyone present. They had witnessed something extraordinary disguised as routine legal procedure, and none of them would ever forget the moment when real authority revealed itself through quiet dignity rather than loud demands. Afterward, court administrative staff desperately tried to understand what had occurred during the unprecedented proceeding. Her complete case file disappeared from the digital court management system within minutes of the hearing's conclusion. But one experienced clerk had observed enough during the brief proceeding to remember crucial details. Her official title had once been Strategic Adjudicator Feudal Override Authority. She hadn't answered to domestic legal channels during her active service. She had created the protocols that established those channels. Years earlier, she had personally drafted comprehensive procedures for military tribunals during wartime emergency conditions. Policies still actively used by the Department of Defense. She vanished completely from government service after a classified mission experienced catastrophic complications officially listed as inactive status due to internal reassignment pending review. No one in official channels had heard from her again until this morning's unexpected court appearance. The judge who had recognized her had served as junior legal counsel under a military tribunal system she had once designed and directed. His respectful salute hadn't been acknowledgement of military rank, but recognition of historical contribution to legal precedent. And she had chosen to walk into that courtroom like any ordinary citizen, deliberately selecting anonymity over the legacy she had earned. Her petition had been a formality rather than a genuine request for administrative relief, a notification that she was resuming activities rather than seeking permission to proceed. The scarred temple that casual observers might have attributed to accident or illness was actually evidence of service-related injury sustained during classified operations. Her modest appearance and lack of legal representation had been calculated to avoid drawing attention to her true background, but the attached documentation had made concealment impossible for anyone with sufficient security clearance to understand its significance. The judge's dramatic response had been appropriate recognition of someone whose contributions to military law exceeded anything most legal professionals would encounter during entire careers. Her work had established frameworks that protected both military personnel and civilian populations during the most dangerous conditions imaginable. Legal precedents that saved lives by ensuring proper procedures were followed even under extreme combat stress. Intellectual contributions that would influence military justice for decades beyond her individual service. But she had chosen to operate in shadows rather than seeking public recognition for achievements that couldn't be publicly acknowledged anyway. Her disappearance from official service had been strategic rather than punitive. Someone with her knowledge and capabilities represented either a valuable asset or a significant security risk, depending on political circumstances. Removing her from official channels had protected both her personal safety and the classified information she possessed. But it had also meant abandoning recognition she deserved for contributions that had saved countless lives. The courtroom appearance represented her decision to step back into public visibility for reasons that remained unclear. Whether she was resuming official duties or pursuing personal justice for past wrongs was information that wouldn't appear in any public record. Her case file would remain classified at levels that exceeded normal judicial access, but the judge's recognition had provided public acknowledgement of service that had been hidden for too long. A moment of institutional respect for someone whose work had been essential but invisible. The legal system had briefly honored someone who had shaped that system from behind classified barriers, and then she had disappeared again, leaving only questions about her current activities and future intentions. Her legacy would continue influencing military law regardless of her public visibility, but her personal story remained as classified as the operations she had once directed. The next morning, the judge's elevated chair remained conspicuously empty during scheduled court proceedings. He had formally requested immediate reassignment to advisory status for personal ethical review and professional realignment. On the courtroom's main entrance door, someone had discreetly taped a handwritten note. Not all justice requires sworn testimony. Some justice writes itself. The mysterious woman was never observed again anywhere in the court building or surrounding legal district. But several weeks later, prestigious legal scholars began citing her name in academic discussions about architect of wartime ethics under black-level security clearance. One dedicated law student posted her hand-drawn sketch online showing the courtroom scene. The image went viral across social media platforms. A solitary woman standing calmly while a judge removed his official robes in recognition. They titled the viral image "She Didn't Need a Gavel." The sketch became a symbol of justice that transcended institutional authority, proof that real power came from contribution rather than position, evidence that some people deserved recognition that courts couldn't officially provide. Legal professors began using the incident as a teaching example about the limitations of civilian jurisdiction over certain types of military service. Students learned that some contributions to justice occurred at levels that normal legal processes couldn't access or evaluate. That recognition sometimes came through institutional respect rather than formal legal decisions. Military law schools incorporated her documented work into advanced courses on ethical frameworks under combat conditions. Her protocols became standard curriculum for officers who might face similar situations during deployment, but her personal identity remained classified beyond academic access levels. Students could study her contributions without learning her name or current status. The judge who had recognized her never returned to active courtroom duty. His resignation letter cited encounter with service that exceeded judicial authority to evaluate properly. He accepted a position teaching constitutional law with emphasis on civilian-military legal interfaces. His first lecture always began with the story of meeting someone whose work had influenced his understanding of justice itself. But he never identified her by name or provided details that might compromise security classifications. The courtroom where the recognition had occurred became informally known as the room where power bowed to service. Other judges would sometimes visit to understand what had motivated their colleagues' dramatic career change, but the case file remained permanently sealed, preventing them from accessing the documentation that had triggered such unprecedented recognition. Court security footage of the incident was classified immediately and removed from normal archives. Official records showed only that a petition had been granted and proceedings concluded without appeal. No trace remained of the moment when institutional authority had acknowledged superior service. But the story spread through military legal networks as an example of proper recognition for contributions that couldn't be publicly celebrated. Veterans organizations shared the sketch as inspiration for others whose service remained unrecognized. A reminder that true heroes often operated without seeking acknowledgement of your reward. That the most important work sometimes occurred in shadows where civilian institutions couldn't observe or evaluate it. Years later, military ethics courses would reference the courtroom recognition principle as an example of appropriate institutional response to extraordinary service. But the woman who had inspired that principle remained as invisible as she had chosen to be. Her legacy lived in the legal frameworks she had created in the moment of recognition she had received. Proof that some power didn't need to speak because its work spoke louder than any words. If you believe the most powerful people are the ones who don't ask to be seen, subscribe to The Ordinary Heroes.